Alright, so we're back on working on our car radio. I'm going to go to File, Recent Projects, and I can go to CarConsole because it's one of my recent projects. If it's not listed here, I go to Set Project. I find my car center console. There it is. Hit Set. And then I just go to Open, and there it is. Okay, so we left off last time on this guy, finishing him up. And I realized that I really don't care for the way this front one looks. So I'm going to actually delete these here, or because I don't like to delete things, I'll make a new layer and I'll just call this old parts, in case I end up with any other old parts. Okay, and the reason for it is just, okay, I just didn't like the way it looked. That's the bottom line of it. All right, so I'm just going to create a new polygon cube, and here's a trick. I'm way out here. Here's my move tool down here. Okay, I don't even care about my move tool. I'm just going to hold down C, and I'm just going to middle drag, my middle mouse button drag on that thing to get it right there. Okay. All right, the back one's fine. These ones are good. You don't really see them too much. So I'm just kind of build something really quick. It's not anything, you know, crazy, just really quick. Kind of like that. Add a bevel to it. Come on. Actually, a perfect bevel right there. There we go. All right, and let me just check the size in the front, or I'm sorry, the back view. There we go. And I'm just going to move it to the top. And I'm going to duplicate, pull it down, shifty, shifty, shifty a bunch of times. I'm just hitting shift, holding shift, and then tapping D. There we go. I like that better just because it's kind of broken away from the edge, whereas the old parts one had this like border around it. I don't really care for the border. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to take one of these guys and duplicate it, scale it in, scale it up. There we go. That's perfect. And I'm happier with that than I was with the other one. Okay. And it takes, 2 seconds, but a lot of times you get that where, you don't like something or the client doesn't like something, you just have to redo it. Control G to group all those, center pivot it, rotate it a smidge. There we go. And then to duplicate it, I'm going to group it again, duplicate it again, and then negative scale it in the X direction. Okay, and I'm happy with the way that's turned out compared to the other one. It just seems a little bit more realistic looking. Alright, cool. So let's go through and just see what we have here. Outliner. Here's my old AC vents. I'm just going to drop these guys into the AC vents group just by middle dragging. There we go. And I have my storage area, which is down here that we did. Some NURBS planes, which are right there. Okay. We'll come back and start reorganizing that stuff once we get to those areas. And then I also like to go through, pop the outliner again, and make layers for these. So, new layer for storage. Storage layer. New layer for AC vents. There we go. Now I can turn those things off if I need to, if for whatever reason I needed to turn them off. Alright, so let's go to the radio. And the radios, I think, is probably one of the fun ones because there's like a lot of stuff that we can do. Just looking at an image of a radio face, there's lots of different designs. That we can do. I want you to keep it simple because the more complex you get, the more issues you're going to run into. So something like this is great because there's a lot of simple shapes in here. Okay, so just so you can see what we're doing. So the first thing I like to do is just create some NURBS circles and kind of get them in place of where I want things to be. So I'm going to go to the back view, I'm going to rotate this around. It's very important that you pay attention to which direction these things are rotating and make sure that they're right on -90, 0, 0 kind of thing. I don't want to have something like, come on, like that, where it's some of the random numbers that are in here. Okay. So first thing, let's do, here's the volume control. I'll duplicate this over here, and there's the tuning knob. And these don't have to be 100%, mirrored. Up here I did because I have holes that are mirrored that I need to make sure those line up. Here they can be a smidge off. Let's see. So I have those. I'm going to get some more organically shaped buttons, something kind of like this. Actually, maybe I want to have those there. Let's try that. Pull this up a little bit. There we go. Okay. And again, we're just laying this out here so that when we, do our final stuff, that we know exactly where things are going to go. So it's kind of like this one where you have the power in this. It makes much more sense when you're in the car. You can just like control these really close to each other as opposed to having to reach all the way over there. Alright, so let's grab a NURB square. I'm just going to hold down C with the NURB square selected and middle drag along this guy while I'm in the move tool. And it's not going. There it goes. I just had to click on this little middle manipulator to activate it. Another rotation. And this is going to be my display area. Let's say something like that. Yeah, a little bigger. And then over here I can have a couple buttons for like seek and tune or something like that. Alright, so that's good. So let's add some fillets to this thing. So we need fillets. Whenever we do a surface fillet like this guy was here, we need to make sure that the curves have a fillet too, otherwise it won't work. So curve fillet option box. Make sure trim is selected. A radius 0.25, good. That looks like a nice roundness there. So now I can just grab the next two and hit G, grab the next two and hit G. Okay, now I can just marquee the whole bit of circle, delete the history on it, go to Edit Curves, Attach Curve option box, make sure it's set to Connect, keep originals off, Attach, delete the history, scoot it over, delete these pieces, grab this, slide it back. If I just reset that to 0, it should pop it right where it was. Alright, cool. So we have that. I'm going to duplicate this up here, and I'm just going to resize it. Scale it up like this. This is going to be the CD player. If you're unfamiliar with a CD is, it's these like round discs that we used to play back in the 90s and 2000s before you could just download your music. And I'm just going to grab some of these points and just scale them and push them over. Okay, and what this does is creates a better rounding here than we had before. Before it was like stretched out, so this just kind of tucks everything nice and neat. Do the same thing on this side. Push these in. And I'll even scale these in a little bit too. There we go. And again, this doesn't have to be crazy perfect. You're never going to look at this thing dead on. You want it to be close, but it doesn't have to be, like I said, crazy perfect. Alright, so there we go. Oops, go back to the back view. Alright, so let's get some buttons down here. And the buttons I'm just going to create, this guy here has, like a hole for these buttons, a hole for these buttons. I like the band of buttons, not like that. Car radio. Kind of like this, where it's just like a big opening, and that's where all the buttons are kind of sitting inside there. So that's what we're going to do for that. And we can actually use this guy and just pull him down and just resize him. Now I'm not going to do this one this time. I'm going to right click and go to Control Vertex on it, and I'm going to grab these points and I'll pull them until they're lined up or closer to these points. Okay, I don't want to cross them. That's a bad thing. I'm going to bring them close to it and then grab those points. And then bring these down until it's close to that point. And then grab those points. And then bring these down until we're about there. Okay. So now I can just scoot this back up. And this is where my bank of buttons is going to be. And maybe a little bit shorter. Looks like they're thick buttons. So I can come into these middle buttons here, the middle points, and scale those down, pull them down, again not crossing any points, and then pull these down. Okay, so it's a pretty quick way just to kind of get a nice button shape. That's good. Alright, so that's good there. That lines up with that. We'll add another like Seek Tune button over here. And I think I'm just going to duplicate this one and scoot it over. And what's another button they have on there? There's like Seek Tune. There's a lot of buttons. And then switching the modes, so that could be something too. Just for simplicity, we'll keep this one just a little bit round like that. A little bit round like that. That way we have a nice little spacing here too. And then just because we need something here, I think I'll add a little USB port. Or actually just a headphone jack. It's not really a headphone jack, it's a line input jack. But there we go. Okay. So now that I have all of these curves here, what I need to do is I need to shoot them onto this plane right here so that we can use that to create our surfaces. We can cut holes in it and whatever else. So I'm just going to grab the curves. I'm going to shift click that surface, go to my back view, and make sure everything's lined up the way I want it to be. You know, I look at the spacing here, I look at the spacing there, make sure everything's good. A trick is if I grab this and I center pivot it, this line right here should line up with this thing, and I can see that it doesn't. If I go to wireframe, I can even see there's a line right here. This should probably be moved over a touch, like that. Okay, same thing with this, except obviously this doesn't line up in the center, but I just want to make sure that what I can line up is lined up. Alright, so again, I grab the curves, make sure I grab that surface. I go to Edit Curves, Edit NURBS, Project Curve on Surface option box. And I go to Active View, that's what I want to make sure, and I go to Project. And now I have curves on the surface. Now the method for this, project the curves on the surface, cut the holes out, and then create shapes out of those. Okay? Well, I'm going to hit undo, and we're going to do this a different way. I'm going to create those surfaces here, and then push them into the surface, and then I can do my fillets right there. All right? So I'm going to go to Surfaces Extrude option box. Make sure this is set to distance. I want to go, if I look at this, I want to go in the positive Z direction. So I'm going to say specify Z direction, extrude, and there's all those pieces. Okay, so now I can just grab the pieces, center pivot them, scoot them into here, and then do my fillets just like we did in those other areas. Okay, so I can hide these curves. There we go. I'm going to grab this, shift click that, and I'm going to go to Edit NURBS, Surface Fillet, Circular Fillet. Make sure Create Curve on Surface is on. The reverses are, in this case, they're checked. And then I have a low radius. Especially in these areas, we have to make sure this is low. So I may even need to go to 0.05. And then fillet. Okay, and of course it didn't go the correct direction. It's on the outside. So Let me just play with my radiuses. I like to do it in wireframe so I can see what I'm doing. And it looks like it wants to be negative here, positive there. Okay. And my order was important, remember. So I click this and then I click that. So negative and then positive. So if I go to this guy and I say bam, oops. Well, this guy and this guy, and I go back to that fillet, and I made sure it was a good size. That's a good radius to go with. And I go negative, positive, fillet. Oops. I guess it was the other order. Okay, so I grab the circle first, then the backing. Then I go to fillet. Negative, positive, fillet. And then it should come in the right direction. And it does. Okay, so I can do that for my other ones too. This surface, then that, and just hit G to redo it, and it puts it on the right side. This surface, then that, G to redo it. This surface, then that, G to redo it. And there we go. Okay. Now we have to be careful on like stuff like this, just making sure that we didn't break that fillet. Sometimes when you get into these tight corners, it'll actually break. So I'm going to go to my back view, and just kind of look at this in wireframe and see if there's any spots that look funny. No, it looks like it's pretty good. I could always adjust it if I needed to. I could come into my fillet and lower the size. Usually lowering the size kind of helps correct anything that might be, not working out correctly. Alright, so that looks pretty good. So now let me go and trim all these pieces off. So trim tool, I want to keep the back piece. Keep the back piece, and I'm just keeping the back pieces on all of these. I think that was it. Yep, everything else is chopped off. And then I'm going to click this surface. Now I want to keep this screen area, okay? So that's the only one I really need something there for. So I'm keeping the screen area, so I'm going to duplicate it. And that way when I trim, I can say, I'm going to trim this. I'm going to trim this. And now I have a surface. Let me delete the history on this. I have a surface here that is just the screen. You can see it carries over the curves. Now I have a screen that I can just kind of tuck in, and there's my screen. Okay, so it might take you a couple like tries just to get that, but the thing is that we're duplicating it so that we have two of those kind of in tow. Alright, I'm going to do a couple other things too. This guy down here, I'm going to delete that inner surface. I don't really need that one because I'm going to rebuild that differently. Those are good there, those are good there. Everything else is good. Just that guy here we're going to build a little bit differently. Okay. I'm also going to pull this out. And I like to delete all these extra curves that are inside here. So I'm just trying to marquee them without marqueing other stuff. There we go. And I can just set that back in. Alright, so let's start down here on this guy. So what I want to do is I want to be able to give this a little bit of shape and then close it off. So I'm going to right click and go to isoparm on this little piece. I grab this isoparm, shift click that isoparm, and I go to edit curves, edit NURBS, because it's a NURB surface, insert isoparms. I'm going between selections, 2. There we go. So now I get these extra little edges that I could go to hull, and I don't touch these two here. You never touch the first two coming off the surface. I can go to the next one though, and what I can do is just push this in and scale it out. And you'll see just by doing that little trick, let me turn my wireframe off, is that we've created more of a shape to that. Instead of it being just like a flat fillet, it's still going to blend in. Obviously there's a hole here, but it's still going to blend in. But then we'll have this nice little shape. So I can go back to hull, grab this thing and just kind of tweak that a little bit more. There we go. So that looks more like an audio jack that we could have something plugged into. I can go to the hull here for this one. I made sure I grabbed the very, very last one. And oops, I'm just going to pull it in a little bit. Okay, and then I can just go to isoparm, click this isoparm, and say surfaces planar, and you see how it fills it in. So now it looks like a perfect little audio jack right there. Okay, so we have our screen. Now we can create some buttons, and we're going to create these using polygons. So I'm going to go to polygon cylinder, and I'm going to go to the front view, sorry, back view. I'm going to bring it up, bring it over, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees in the X. We'll go to wireframe and just scale it down until it's the size, and then line it up. There we go. It looks like it's pretty lined up. So now I can scale it uniformly to get it to fit better. Okay. Now you'll see there's faceting going around that. I'm going to get rid of that just by going to subdivisions here and changing that to 40. I'm also going to take my caps off. So 0 caps. Okay. And I'm going to squeeze this until it's right against the edge of it. So that as I tuck this in, it's perfectly like snugly fitting in there. Maybe a little bit less. There you go. That looks good. Okay. So now it's just a matter of kind of shaping this to look like the way I want it to look. And if we look at what a button looks like, sometimes they have these ridges going around it. That's a typical thing. Sometimes it's like this fancy stuff. We don't need the fancy stuff. Sometimes they're smooth. I'm going to give 1 ridges and 1 no ridges. Okay, that way I kind of have like a little difference in the two things. And they're not going to be crazy ridges. They're just going to be like little bumps on them. All right. So the first thing, if I'm going to add these little bumps, I may want to go with a higher division rate, like 80 is one way to do it. I'm going to stick with 40 though, and just try to see how that's going to look. And if I need to, I can go back and adjust this. First thing, I'm going to give some roundness to this guy. So I'm going to right click and go to face, click the face, and say mesh, not mesh, edit mesh bevel, and just offset this, give it a couple segments, and then we've got a nice round button. And you'll see that there's some faceting happening here. If I click on this and go to normals, soften edge, that will get rid of that faceting. So now it's a nice smooth radio button. Okay. So now let me go through and grab every other one of these lines. And you can imagine with 80, obviously this would take twice as long because we have twice as many faces. There we go. Didn't take us too long. I'm double checking, just making sure I grabbed them all. I'm going to go to Edit Mesh Extrude, and I'm just going to click on the offset, 0.01. There we go, nice little inset here. Extrude again, and then just push it in. And so now I've created these little like dips inside that. That's one way I could do it. I could also, let me go back, I could also pull this out and create ridges that way as well. Okay, whichever way I think is going to look better, typically that's what I try to do. Why wouldn't you want it to look better? And then I can always adjust my sizing of this. I just don't want to see like a hole. Like if I look right here, you can see there's a hole right there, but the chances of me hitting that angle perfectly are pretty slim. All right, so that one looks pretty good. I like the way that looks actually. And I can always hit 3, and we'll get these like little roundings as trying to like smooth this out of that, so we can get that to look kind of like a neat shape as well. I may need to scale it up if I do that because of what the smoothing is doing. And I could also, if I didn't want this to like pull back so far, I could go and insert an edge loop going this way, and then hit 3, Now I get these little tighter bands there, which definitely looks a lot better. I definitely like the way that looks, 10 times better. And if I wanted to duplicate, drop it down, bam. There we go. If I wanted to keep a smooth one, I would just do the same thing I did here, but I wouldn't do the beveling. I would just keep the cylinder and then just do the bevel on it. So I just want to see what it's going to look like with just that, which hindsight I should have probably just saved the one, but whatever. It took us 5 seconds to do it. Let's take another 5 seconds and do it again. So I'm resizing it until it fits. Repositioning it. There we go. Got some more divisions here. Take off the cap. Grab the face. Edit mesh bevel. Add some fillet. Soften my edge. Come up more. There we go. Yeah, that looks nice. All right. Move on from there. I do need a polygon plane for my CD tray, so I'm just going to grab a polygon plane. I could use the NURBS too. We're not doing anything fancy with it. NURBS will render, or polygons will render faster than NURBS. When you create a polygon surface, all it has to do is triangulate it, and then it can render it out. When you create a NURBS surface, it actually has to convert it to polygons and triangulate it, and then render it out. So it's actually a bigger process. So anytime you can use polygons, it's better, which is why we have some areas that we're using polygons and some areas we're using NURBS, just so you get comfortable with using them. Some of these you kind of have to be use NURBS in order to get the shape that you want. I just took 2 polygon planes, or 1 polygon plane, duplicated it. Now I have this little, area here for my CD tray dust thing. I'll just duplicate one of these, make it bigger, so we don't see anything back there. Alright, so that's pretty easy. Back to the front view, / back view. Create another polygon cylinder. (90x). Caps off. Now this one's going to be a little trickier because of the kind of shape that it is. So what I'm going to do is just line it up the best I can, scale it in, resizing. I didn't do anything crazy fancy with it, so I can just kind of eyeball this pretty much. There we go. That's pretty good. All right, and this is going to be the same as the one below it. So let me grab the face, and we'll put a bevel on it. There we go. Good. We'll do our little normals trick. And there's that button. Then we'll duplicate it, and we'll scoot it down to here. I think I might want to be a tad bit bigger. There we go. Okay, so now we have these buttons done. So now we can create this button. It's be a little bit trickier here, but it'll still work. So we'll start off with the polygon plane. We'll see how this goes. Usually when you model something, you have a plan of, this has worked before, I want to see if it's going to work again. So we start there. So I just took the divisions off. I'm going to put them back on in a minute. But I just don't want to have to see the divisions while I'm kind of lining this thing up. And I can also hit the plus sign on my keyboard and give myself a little bit finer increments. There we go. Alright, so now for the width, oops, I'm going to add a couple in the width. I'm going to add a couple in the height. So this will be 1 button, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 buttons. So that should give us plenty for, like, you know, they usually have like random buttons on side and on the radios. There's that one that I saw. Like this one here, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's AM, FM, tape, CD, info, seek, you know, lots of different buttons. Alright, so I'm just going to go and grab vertex, this guy, this guy, this guy, and that guy, and I'm just going to scale them in. Like that. Then I'm going to grab these middle ones and scale them up. Grab the outside ones, scale them in a touch. There we go. Alright, so that's pretty good. It matches pretty decently. We'll probably use another edge there, but we'll get to that. Alright, so now I'm going to go to face, and I'm just going to grab every other column. I'm going to go to mesh and say extract, option box. Make sure this is on, make sure this is 0, extract, and right click and go to object mode. Now what this does is it separates those pieces. Okay. Now see, it didn't separate these. I can just go back to mesh and separate, and now all the pieces will be separated. So now I have individual buttons for each one of those. Okay. So now what I can do is go into each one of these, and I'm going to extrude it. Edit mesh extrude. There we go. Then I can grab the faces again. I'm just going to switch it up here, turn this off, turn this back on. Find a good angle so I can see it. And just marquee the thing. Okay, now I did grab extra stuff here. I'm just going to hold down the control key and deselect the back stuff. So now you can see I just have those front faces selected. Okay, I could also just go to edge and click these. That's going to be harder to do. Faces works. There we go. So I'm going to go to bevel. Now it does bevel these middle ones, but I'm not too concerned about the middle ones. Let's see, 2 segments. Nope, not 2 segments. 1 segment. Accidentally deselected, so I'm just going to go back. And 2 segments might work if I go small enough. Okay, now you're noticing here, let me isolate these objects. Just click this green button here. There's holes in some of my surfaces here, and sometimes when you do a bevel, it does that. So I just marquee it, right click, assign existing material Lambert 1, and now those holes are gone. Okay, so now there's my buttons. I essentially have all the buttons created. I don't need these middle ones, so I can always go through and grab these edges. And let me go back a few steps. It might just be easier to delete those edges in the middle on the ones we don't need them, and then do all my beveling instead of having to go through and figure that mess out. Okay, so like on this guy here, just grab these, and I have to go to edit mesh, delete edge, or I can hit control delete. I can't just hit delete. Let me turn on my wireframe. So I'm just hitting control delete to delete those. There we go. Now these guys need to have those. I can't not have those, otherwise I would have like gaps here. Okay, so I'll just have to be more careful with those guys as I do these. And while I'm doing that, let me go back to my back view and just kind of tidy this up a little bit, just so it's a little bit tighter into these corners. So insert edge loop, put an edge here and here, grab the vertices, and pull it over. Another edge loop there. And I always try to grab the opposite, that way I'm moving them all together. That's much better, okay? Now I could, because this thing is basically a mirror, is I could take this, duplicate it, and see where the pivot is right here in the middle. And I could just negative scale it over to the other side by popping in -1 in the X direction. That should line up pretty good. Alright, so now let me grab these. And let me go to my extrude, pull it back. And the fact that this one's going opposite is because I did the negative scale on it. Okay, so that's no big deal. I'll hit undo. I'll go to the move tool and just move it back. That works also. Okay, then I can go to object mode, grab the middle buttons first, and just do a bevel on them. Let's see what that looks like. And you can see here again, it's doing that weird make it transparent thing. So we can just right click, assign existing, Lambert, bam, there it is. All right, 0.05 I think I want to have the buttons at. That's good there. I'll turn my wireframe off so I can see. Looks good. Alright, so now 0.05 was what that one was. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to grab this specific edge going all the way around and say bevel 0.05. Oops. You can see how tiny that became just because of how this one's beveling. So I can just play with this value until I get it to be the same thing. I know I'm going to need 2 divisions. .35 in my case looks like it's going to be the right value. Okay, so let's go down to this guy, do the same thing. Another bevel, 0.35, 2 divisions, whammo bammo. Reassign Lambert 1. There we go. Okay, so now we have our radio buttons. We can just stick those into our radio. Turn our wireframe off, and there we go. Okay, so the radio face is done. So now let's go through and just organize it. So here's a trick. I marquee everything. Like I just marquee the radio face. It's going to grab a whole bunch of stuff. Then I hold Control, and I just deselect the stuff I don't want. And there's all my radio face stuff. So then I can just Control G to group it after deleting history. Control G to group it. Radio face. Go to my layers, new layer. And now I can turn that off as well. Okay, and then I have all of these. These are all like groups that when we created a fillet, it created those groups. So I can just grab those and hit delete. I can grab my curves that are inside here and just middle drag them to my curves group right there. And then we're just continue working. Okay, we only have a couple more pieces left. We have the AC controls, and then we have this stuff over here that will also adjust. Okay. And I think I set that to be the cup holder, but I think I'll just make it something else. Just like a little tray area. Okay, so let's stop it there, and then we'll pick it up on the AC controls.